Page 65 in Tractate עירובין, I'm going to continue our discussion in regard to someone who's drunk or intoxicated. It's two different states of mind, and as far as the ability to pray, communicate with other people, etc. אמר רב ששת משום רבי אלעזר בן עזריה, 65. יכול אני לפתור את כל העולם כולו מן הדין מיום שחרב בית המקדש ועד עכשיו, שנאמר לכן שמעין הזאת ענייה ושחורה ולא מיין. So he said in a more sense a general statement. He said, I have the ability to exempt the entire world from the day of judgment, which you see in a lot of literature that speak about a time that the heavenly court rewind all the deeds and punish for the bad iniquities. And he particularly speak about the time that the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. It was a time that later created an exile. So here they describe a sentence from the book of Yeshayahu, Isaiah 51, that he said that he speak about a nation in a term that we use a lot of time in the Song of Songs. He said, hear me, O a nation that it's indigent and drunk, but not from wine. So it means that in a state of nation, the nation, from all the sorrow and the suffering of the exile, they are in a state of drunk or intoxication, and therefore you cannot judge them for all their iniquities, since they are in a turmoil in their lives. Imagine mass murder of Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonian king, having all the people scattered around the world, whoever remain, all those remnant, and beside of that is the persecution, etc. So he said that the nation is like drunk, so you cannot judge them for those iniquities that they perform while they are in exile. Meitivei, now we're going to discuss the whole state of mind of someone who's drunk. Shikor mikachom mikach umimkarom imkar. They said if someone is in a drunk, so as far as making a business transactions, we said that we consider that as a valid transactions. And he said, avar avera sheyesh b'mita ma'amitin oto. If he, not only we consider he has a business transaction in both parties, the seller and the buyer, but also if he committed a sin, we punished him or her. He says, malkut malkin oto. If he deserved malkot, so they punish him accordingly. But he said, klalo shel davar, a general statement, הרי הוא כפיקח לכל דבר אשר פטור מן התפילה. So he said, even it's basically considering as someone who's alert in everything, but he is exempt from tefillah. So the Shulchan Aruch, they elaborate on that in the Orach Chaim 99, and Mishnah Berurah, one exactly in how someone who's drunk can pray or cannot pray. Basically, the whole idea is tefillah tzricha kavanah. The prayer needs to have the person's intent, the sincere intent. He needs to understand that he's speaking before the Almighty God. So the belief is that if someone drank a certain amount, like say 3 ounces of wine, he is not in a proper state of mind that he can stand before God and talk to him directly. So it means that someone who's drunk will get punished for his sin. So how come he said before that he can exempt the whole world from judgment because they are in a state of being drunk? So they said, "Ma יכולתי לפתור דקאמר נמי min din tefillah." So he meant to say from their need to pray and they don't have the ability to pray, from that point I can exempt them from punishment, but nothing else. אמר רבי חנינא, לא שנו אלא שלא הגיע לשכרותו של לוט, אבל הגיע לשכרותו של לוט פטור מכולם. The Torah give a clear testimony for Lot. We soon go to the festival of Shavuot, And we know the story of Lot, that after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, he was in a cave. And in the Torah itself said clearly that he was intoxicated, that he was in a level of totally unawareness, especially the first night. So they said, someone who's not responsible for his deed, if he reach a level of Lot, the level of intoxication of Lot, but if not, then he is considering as someone who's somehow how do you call it, impute, or someone who's not 100% mentally capable, but still there is a certain level. So in other words, only if we reach level of Lord, so we don't take any business transactions from him, and we not follow. And by the way, the code said it in the Choshen Mishpat in 235, he said it. Now we elaborate on the idea of tefillah. As you know, when we are praying, we have in our intent to talk to Hashem, to talk to God. So אמר רבי חנינא כל המפיק מגן בשעת גאוות סוגרים וחותמים צרות בעדו. So he said, if someone is not praying while he is intoxicated, so in other words, he makes sure that mapik is like Rashi have two interpretations, but he said that if when a person is intoxicated, he reach a level that he's not fully in a state of comprehension and communicate with God properly. So they said if someone makes sure that he's not praying, so Rashi used the word klomar, and I explained in my book Birak Klomar Barashi al Hashas. I explained that they said klomar sheno mitpalel, that a person's avoiding himself from praying at that time, which means he understands that it's very inappropriate to do a prayer. So there's a one Rashi said that it's applied to Magen Avram. They said that the shield of Avram, that's the reason they use the word Magen. Or they said that his Magen is like shield because it's protecting the person. But the key point is, they said, סוגרים וחותמים צרות בעדו, they're avoiding sorrow from him. Why? שנאמר געבר אפיקי מגינים סגור חותם צר. They said in the book of Job 41, they said that someone who's remove himself from praying to God when it's a time that he's not mentally capable, he should not talk to God at that time, so the avoiding from create sorrow for himself. So they said, how do you know that language is speak about passing by, which apply to the sorrow? When Job talked to his friends in chapter 6, so he said, he's talking about friends. And he said, look how traitor they are. They used to be my friends when I was rich, when I have all this wealth, Job said. And now I turn around and I lost everything and people turn away from me. They don't associate with me. Only the good friend of me when I was in the top of in the high heel. But when I'm low, they betrayed me. So he used it as a simile, like a euphemism, when he used the term of a river to Bgida. He says that they traded like a river. What does that mean to a river? There's a certain seasons. If you go to a typical spring water come by a river, that it's applied to winter time, summertime is all dry out. So that's it. He tried to speak about his friends, that it's over there transient friendships. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kol she'eino mefik itmar. So he said it means as long as he is not speaking to God and his mindset is not out, in other words, he is still in a state of intoxication, so he avoiding himself from praying. That's the best way for a person to avoid himself from sorrow. How do you know that this language of mapik, of avoiding sorrow, it's language of revealing gilui? Dichtiv It's written in regards to a splitting of the sea. King David said in the book of Psalms, chapter 18, he said, Vayirau afike mayim. They use the word afike mayim. So afik is something that is discovered. Vayigalu mosdot devel, that is then discovered in the world. Migdei. Migdei krai mashma ben lemar or ben lemar. So now you ask a question, what's the difference between the drashot? Both of these rabbis said the same thing. What's the difference between my benayu? What's the difference? Ika benayu, the Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet, he went to sleep in order to reduce the influence of the wine. The Rav Sheshet masar shimte leshamei. The Rav Sheshet, he asked his attendants to wake him up in the time of prayer. So Rashi said, "Kitzen Rabbi Chanin damar avur ba'al Rav Sheshet v'asur pelad sheyor me'elav." So in other words, he wants to sleep, but he asks his attendant to wake him up for the time of prayer. Now it's a different opinion between Rabbi Chanin and Rabbi Yochanan what exactly involved. Ma itli de Rav Sheshet, ma tled de Rav Sheshet. So Rashi here explains that there is a certain time that you have the influence, but then upon sleeping, you take away this influence of it. It's like in a way, just let's use that example with you take a sleeping pills. So I'm privileged not to take it almost ever, but there are people who take sleeping pills. So they will tell you that as long as you take these pills, so you're in a state of sleeping. The minutes that the pill was no longer having influence on you, guess what happened? You wake up. So in that sense, that's the sleeping is taking away the influence of the wine. That's one school of thought by Rashi. Tosfot go here, and Tosfot involved here with the clinical psychology. This Tosfot here is a fascinating. We don't have enough time to delve with every word in a Tosfot, but basically he dealt about two opportunities for a person. When you have a problem, for example, someone is a drunk. So there are two issues. Either you go straight and fight it, okay, or in a sense, you just to circumvent the problem. So fighting it means that despite that some level of being drunk, you try to, for example, I have a friend, he's from Russia. So he told me when he was studying in St. Petersburg, they have a math professor that he was absolutely ingenious in the class. And some students found him on the floor in the park outside of the university at night, sleeping like a homeless while he was totally drunk. So it means that sometimes there are people who just go to sleep. And there are sometimes they fighting against that situation. So that's what explain. That's the idea of ga'ava, that I would say. It's a side note. In the Musa world, in the Yeshiva world, in the past generation, it was two schools of thought. I'm talking the generation that passed after the Vilna Gaon. It was two great schools of thought in Lithuania. One is called the school of thought of Novardok, and the other one is school of thought of Kelm. What's the difference? The school of thought for Novardok, they believe that the person need to break his trait. So in other words, if you have a bad trait, you need to break yourself to break that trait. So in other words, you need to, a certain area that you're weak, and you need to fight it, and exactly the Tosfot said here, fight it tooth to nail, and break yourself until that trait will remove from you. So if someone is a issue of drinking issues, you need to fight it, etc. Everyone is on the weak point. Kelm go differently. Kelm, the school of Kelm, which is a city in Europe, but it was a great school of thought in Lithuania, they said, they oppose it, and they said, if you're breaking, you're making someone in two pieces. And then, by the breaking himself, it have a side effect in a mental recuperation of that person. So there's a two school of thought following this Tosfot. which again, one of the concern is that he will have so much with sleeping that he passed the time of tefillah. Let's face it, you have some people, bohemians, that wake up in the middle of the day and go to sleep who knows when. So it's the whole idea of the whole schedule of the day ruined it. So again, it's a beautiful Tosfot. I wish to have more time to dwell with that. אמר רבי חייא בר אשי אמר רב, כל שאין דעתו מיושבת עליו אל יתפלל. He said that, and nowadays it's in a practical halacha they don't do that, but that's advisable, wishable, etc. That if someone doesn't have the proper mindset totally, he should not pray to Hashem, because he cannot focus in a prayer to say it properly. Mishum shene'emar, because they said it. Batzar al yoreh. Now here, this is an issue, because all the meforshim here, especially the Tosfot and Maharsha, ask a question. They said, I couldn't find this pasuk. Where is this pasuk? Tosfot said, for example, ושמע בספר בן סירה, ומצינו בכמה מקומות שמביא הש"ס מקורות הכתובים בספר בן סירה. Again, this is one of those external sources. They don't use it as part of the writings, not a canon, not a writing, etc. It's books that Ben Sira, filled of allegories, metaphors, etc. So he said that I searched the entire Tanakh, I could not find this source. It has to be something maybe from Ben Sira or something like that, but I can't find it directly in Tanakh. Rabbi Chanina biyom hadiratach lo metzalei. They said Rabbi Chanina, when he was angry, he didn't pray because he couldn't focus properly. Amar batzar al yoreh. There is a pasuk that Tosfot explained, when a person is in great distress, he should not pray because it's not proper to talk before the king while you are. But again, as we said, in the practical halacha, persons should pray, but they bring an example what is advisable and wishable. Now the GEMARA continues and said that that's applied not only to pray, but also teaching and study Torah. They said, Mar ukva b'yom deshuta lo hava nafik lebeit dina. When it was a time that it was a strong wind, south wind, so he didn't left to sit in a bet din, in a rabbinical court, because he felt that he will not be able to have a peaceful mindset while he's sitting in a court. Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak hilchet abaya tziluta. The person needs to rule halacha, he needs to have a clear mindset. Keyoma de istena. The same day that they have a north wind, which means that it's a beautiful, nice weather. Amar Abaye, I amra li em, karibkutcha lo tnai. So he said, if he was a orphan, so you have someone that functioned as his mother. It's a famous GEMARA in Kiddushin 31 that said that he was orphan from the very young age. So he said, if she said to me, do something small, like bring me the part of the food. Already doesn't have the ability to focus. So Amar Rava ikratztan kitana lo tanai. He says, if I get bite by lice, in other words, most probably it's a different one than we know. But the key point is, the Meiri said that even small things disturbing person from the proper focusing on the limud. And we're getting close to Shavuot, and we know in the 6th chapter in Pirkei Avot, they talk about 24 ways that the person involved in limud, one of them is the ability to focus properly on the limud. So he said, as every small thing already disturbing the ability to focus properly. Mar Beida Ravina Avdelei Mei Shiva Mana Shiva Yomi. So she basically made for him 7. Most probably they suffered from lice issue in those days. Mm-hmm. So she made for him 7 different suits, 7 different outfits for 7 different days. So he will not. Rabbi Hanan said that you will not be disturbed with those issues of lice. Amar Rav Yuda. Now they talk about the proper time to study Torah. They said, Lo ibre leila ele shinta. He says the proper way of understanding night is in order to sleep. Because Tosfot said it's not enough time to study Torah because it's short. But אמר רבי שמעון בן לקיש לא יברא סיהר אלא לגרסה. He says that Hashem, remember this is before the time of electricity. So he said Hashem created the moon in order to study Torah. אמר לי לרב זירח, מחלתן שמעתך. You said the precise proper thing. אמר לו, דימה מנינו. He says, because I study, my teaching is good because I study during the day when I was fresh in my mind, and not at night when I'm very tired. That the Meiri said, when you're very tired, your ability to focus is much less. So אמר לי בratei, so daughter of the Rav Chizda le Rav Chizda, when he was very much focusing on study Torah at night, she said to him, Lo ba'emar mein nam purta. She asked him, don't you want to sleep a little bit? You study so much? Amar la hashta atu yom medareche vekatinenu v'nenum tuva. He said to her, very soon we're going to pass this brave life, and after I'm no longer among the living, he says, it will be very long days that they can sleep a lot and very short to study any Torah or mitzvot. So he said, at that time I have plenty of time to sleep, but now I don't have that time. We are the people who study Torah, we are laborer of the day, because the focus of study Torah is during the day. So Rav Yaakov was smart. He set up a day that is certain chapters he wants to accomplish, and he was, in a way, submitted to Hashem in a sense that he said, "This is my plan today. I'm planning to study so and so hours, so and so chapters, etc." So even he was later, when you have a family and everything, he needs to be involved with making a living. He was basically borrowed those hours and fix it with the other hours. So in other words, he was focusing on the centerpiece of his life in accomplish those certain items he wants to accomplish during the day, and the rest he was involved with the livelihood, but it was like borrowing hour in order to complete what he planning to study every day. We back to the subject of intent in the prayer. So it's this again, you should not take it literally, but he said that a person who comes from a journey should not pray for 3 days. Why? Because he believed that 3 days a person is still not there, it's like a jet lag. But number one, we have to remember that those days traveling was by donkey and by desert, and it was very different. And he says, Shenemar, they describe when Ezra made an aliyah, when he came from Babylon to Eretz Israel. So he have a long journey that he carry all those people that willing to join him from coming back to Eretz Israel and building the Beit HaMikdash, the second one. So they said in the book of Ezra, chapter 8, "Va'akabtzem la'nahar haba el ha'ava, va'achanachane sham shlosha va'avina va'am, va'kohanim u'bnei Levi lo matzad isha." So he said that I collected them, I gathered them to that river, and we are there 3 days, etc. So it means that Ezra could not focus who are the people who join him and everything, because he couldn't sleep from all the tremendous amount of effort that you have. Imagine, you need to manage all the people and all the travel and everything in the desert. So he meant to say that, especially in the prayer, how you'll be able to focus while we are in such a hectic of traveler. The father of Shmuel, he did that. He didn't pray for 3 days when he would come from a long journey. Shmuel didn't pray in the house that he smelled wine, because even smelling wine put him in a state of intoxication. Rav Papa didn't pray in a house that, what did they translate in your English?
That contained fried fish.
Fried fish. He couldn't, because he smelled that, forget it. He couldn't eat it. Most probably it wasn't Lowry one. It was different. Right? It was different type of fish. Why, David?
Well, Larry would never fry his fish.
Is that true?
I don't know. I may have had fried fish once or twice in England.
All right. Now the Gemara speak about the negative influence of drinking wine And they said, Amar Rabbi Chanina kol hamitpate beyeno, which means if someone wants to make peace with someone else, so what do? They drink, right? So yesh bo midat kono. He have something from Hashem. Shenemar v'yarach Hashem et reach hanichoach. So when Noah brought the offering, when he left the ark, so the Torah said in Bereshit, in Genesis 8, that in our anthropomorphic language, that Hashem smelled the smell of the offering. So Amar Rabbi Chia kol mityashev beyeno, if someone drinking in order to have a better focus, as we mentioned yesterday, these different people and different influence, there are people the opposite. The drinking, they feel merited, they feel they can focus better when they drink, etc. So he said, kol mityashev beyeno yesh bo da'at. He can, Shivim Skenim is like the focus like the 70 elder in the Sanhedrin. Why? Yain nitan b'shivim otiyot, v'sod nitan b'shivim otiyot. If you look at the word yain, it's have yud, which is 10, yud is 10, and nun, it's 50. So altogether, it's 70. If you look at the word sod, samech is 60, vav is 6, and dalet is 4. It's the same numerical value of 70. So they said, Nichias yain yatsa sod. That's famous statement that he said, you get in wine and the secret come out. In other words, usually that's what happened to people. They get drunk,
Start talking
and say things that they will not say while they are
Absolutely,
in
while they're
a
sober.
proper
Yep.
state of mind. All of a sudden you discover a different personality when they get drunk. And they tell you a lot of things that they're restraining themselves while they are not, when they are sober. אמר רבי חנין לא נברא יין אלא לנחם אבלים ולשלם שכר לרשעים. The reason that Hashem created wine is to comfort the mourners and to give a reward for the wicked. Why? Because they drinking and merited, going to all those clubs, right? And they get the reward in this world. So they said, why? Because they said in the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, תנו שכר לעובד ויין למראה נפש. So give the drink to someone who's self-destructive, someone who spent all his life in the nightclubs, and the marei nefesh, someone who is very embittered, need to have a comfort like the mourners. So that's the purpose of wine. אמר רבי חנינא בר פפא, כל שאין יין נשפך בתוך וכמים אינו בכלל ברכה. Now he speaks that about having wine in a sense of sign of blessing, like you do in a Havdalah. So you overflow the cup of wine is an act of blessing. So it means that if a person have abundance, so then he allow himself to do that, and it's an act of blessing, act of abundance. So they said, Shenemar, because it said in the book of Shmot, Exodus 23, Uberach et lachmecha veit memecha, that Hashem bring a blessing upon your bread and upon your liquid, the drinking, the water. So what type of water is bring a blessing? That it's compared to the bread. So they said, Ma lechem, the same way as a bread, it's considering an important food, shenikach bekesef maaser. So as you know, there is a circle of 7 years of time. So you have the first, the second, the fourth, and the fifth. You bring a second tithe. It's called maaser sheni. So this one they need to eat inside the wall of Jerusalem while they are in a state of purity, and or you basically redeem that value with money and bring it to Yerushalayim, and you eat it instead of those fruit in a substitute. So he said, af mayim, the same way as here, when you talk about water, it's not water, but shenikach bekesef maaser sheni, meaning that you can go ahead and use that money as a substitute with water, or ma'inihu, yain. So what you do, well, something that you praise the Almighty God, it's a wine. V'kakar elei mayim, when you use as a in a way analogy or euphemism, instead of using the word wine, we're using the word water to teach us So we're now at 65b. אי נשפך בביתו כמים, איכא ברכה, ואילו לא. If you have a wine that was in abundance, so it's part of blessings. Otherwise, it's not, which means it's a sign of abundance. So we completed with the statement, אמר רבי אלי, בשלושה דברים אדם ניכר, בחוסו ובכיסו ובכעסו. The three, this is playing with words, all with kaf, samech, vav. Bekoso, meaning you recognize person the way that they drink wine, but even if drink wine, they still have the proper mindset. And bekiso, how do you communicate action between two people if you do it with faith and honesty or not. Ubechaso, meaning that if he is angry and how he reacts at a time of stress. So it's playing with words. He's saying koso, kiso, kaso. Ve'amrela, av besachako. So even when he laughed. So you see here Rashi said beautifully, and he said, how do you recognize a person? Adam nikari magunu. How you know that he's a trustworthy? He says, bekoso im da'atom yoshav talabeino. If he's drinking and he's still clear mindset. Bekiso כשנוסף נותן לבני אדם באמונה הוא עושה. When he deal with business transactions, if it's with faith. בכעסו שאינו קפדן יותר מדי. When he's angry, he's not get so overreacted that he is like so furious that you cannot talk to him. And they said also, even he's careful when he laughs, that doesn't look like he is mentally sick. And the Meiri said that otherwise he looks like fool by the eye of many. So that's again, you recognize person, it's playing with word. Kiso, kiso, kaso, sachako. Now we're going back to the topic of the עירוב. אמר רב יהודה, אמר רב, ישראל ונוכרי בפנימית וישראל בחיצונה, במעשה לפני רבי ואסר, ולפני רב חייא ואסר. Picture number 231 in the מאורות הדף. Everyone see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have here the fellow Jew, Israel. You have the non-Jew. So they are both living in the internal part of the property.
Mm-hmm.
You see the border line, and this is internal. And you see an access here to their property. Now what happened is, it wasn't just one and one, as the Mishna said, but it was another fellow Jew that living in the external part of the property, which means when you enter from a public domain, you have this property, and then you enter to a second part, and you have this is by the fellow Jew and this is not. So both rabbis said that it's forbidden. So which means that the one who live here is basically cannot carry in his domain without get a permission from that one, from the non-Jew. יתוב רבא ורב יוסף בשלי פירקא דרב ששת ויתיב רשש כמן אמרה לדשמעתי. Who hold that? And he said כרבי מאיר. That is the first Tana in the Mishnah, that he said that even one single fellow Jew that lived together with a non-Jew in the yard, he cannot carry if he doesn't get that permission. Karkesh Rabba Rashi. So which means Rabba nod his hand that he agreed. Amar Rav Yosef Trei Gavrei Rav Revan K'Rabanan Litu Be'ay Milta. He says, two great men like these sages make such a error, such a mistake. He said, Iki Rabbi Meir Lama Yisrael B'chitzona. So if you go by the Rabbi Meir, so what's the difference if you have a fellow Jew in the outer? So what's the difference? So it's just, you say simply, if you have a fellow Jew that's living with a, in those examples with the idolater, the same domain. And he said, the other way, if you tell me that it was a specific situation and they brought before the rabbis, So you can continue. והבמנה מרב, פנימי במקומו מהו? ואמר להם מותר. He said that if you have someone that participates in the internal yard, in his yard, so if he make the non-Jew an issue, so it means that you have a fellow Jew that living in the inner courtyard. Mm-hmm. Now, so can he carry in the inner courtyard? And he answered and he said, "V'amar lahem mutar." He said that he permitted him to carry there. So it, according to that understanding, if you have an idolater and you're living there, it does not render it prohibited for a single Jew to carry, which is actually contrary to what Rabbi Meir said. Ve'lamaik Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that he said that it's only if you have two fellow Jews that's create the issue, but not one. Ha'amar ad shiu shnei Yisraelim osrin ze al ze. He said that it's only apply when you have to have two Jews living in the same courtyard, who themselves render it prohibited for one another to carry without an eruv. So he said, Ela ke Rabbi Akiva. You have to go by the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who said, Amar, רגל המותר במקומה אוסר שלא במקומה. He said the foot of one who is permitted to in his own place and nonetheless rendered it prohibited not to his own place, which means that the fellow Jew that live in the inner courtyard is permitted to carry on his own courtyard. However, in order to leave his courtyard, he passes through an outer one, in which is prohibited for him to carry. So it means that it's also prohibition against for someone who's also living in the outer part. So he said, "Lama li goy afilu Israel nami." So why you say that it's applied to a non-Jew, even a Jew that live in the inner part, he is forbidden to go by the outer part. אמר אבונה ברד רב יהושע לעולם כרבי אליעזר בן יעקב ורבי עקיבא. You have to go by רבי אליעזר בן יעקב ורבי עקיבא, ואחר מה עסקינן, כגון שעירבו, which means that you have the two fellow Jews that make the Eruv in their yard together, ותמה דאיקרא נוכרי דאסיר. אבל איקרא נוכרי לא אסיר. That's apply only when you have the idolater that who render it prohibited to carry, but if it's no idolater, it's not prohibited. So basically, they can establish an Eruv with one another and they are permitted to carry. Be'aminei Rabbi Eliezer or other nusach is Rabbi Lazar Merav Yisrael v'nochi bechitzona v'Yisrael b'pnimit mao. If you have an idolater and a Jew living in the outer and you have another Jew in the inner part mao, so how you handle it? So he said hatam detamei mishum deshchicha dedayer. If you tell me the first scenario, it's a particularly the issue that the idolater live in the inner part, in the inner yard, so you cannot carry it outside. But the mirtat nochri, right? Because otherwise the idolater will not kill him. As you remember, we discussed it yesterday and day before yesterday that if there are two Jews, you will not be so tempted to do it. וסבר השתעת את ישראל ואמר לישראל דאבה גבה חווה. So if there's any conflict or any issues, that the other guy will come and help him. So אבל לך אמין על הנפק הזלי. But otherwise it's when it leave alone, the idolater will say to that the guy that live out there, he left. So therefore it's an issue between the two, and therefore the idolater will not make this yard prohibited to make an eruv for that fellow. Or Dilma, or maybe you said the opposite. Maybe you said Hacha Name Mirtat, and he said the Savar Hashtaat et Israel v'chazli. Maybe he's still afraid because he's afraid that someone, the other fellow, will come here from the inner courtyard, and he will see me. So it means that Amar Lei, so Rav responded to all of them, and he said that it was quotation from the book of Mishlei, book of Proverbs, chapter 9, and he said, Ten lachacham veyechkam od. Give the wise more wisdom, and give a wise man, and he will be wiser. Which means it is proper to be stringent even in such a case. So as a result, if one carrying is prohibited in the outer courtyard unless the Jews rent from the idolater, otherwise it's an issue. ריש לקיש ותלמידי רבי חנינא עלו להר ופונדק. So Rish Lakish and the students of Rabbi Hanina, they come to that place, to the certain inn, it was like motel, and it was before Shabbat. So ולא בסוחר בא ומזכיר, ואמר מהו למי גרגרי. So here is the issue. The Tosfot explained that the idolater wasn't there in Shabbat, and here you see in the picture number 232. Does everyone see the picture? Everyone see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the story is, so they are travelers. They go on the public domain, and this is the motel. And the one who renting the place is a idolater. Now you have here a fellow Jew that live, another fellow Jew that live, and an idolater that live there. So they have issue here of getting that place for Shabbat, because the fellow that lease wasn't there, but the owner was there.
Mm.
So the fellow that runs it and lease it, let's call him, for the sake of understanding, okay, let's say the owner, his name is, let's say Adam, and the fellow that rented for him, his name is John. And John wasn't there. But Adam, who was the original owner of that place, was there. So they have an issue, they can use it for Shabbat. Can they rent that place for Shabbat and use it to make an Eruv? So they said, as long as the owner, Adam, cannot evicted John from his property, so it's not a question, because he's now not entitled, is not part of that, right? Kitibah, one is the real problem. In other words, is a time, for example, for payment, and he's about to evicted him for non-payment or other reasons. What do you do? So because they have potential to basically evicted that tenant, so maybe he can rent he can give the permission to use that spot for the yard, for those people to make the eruv, or odilma hashta miha ha lo salke, or perhaps now in any case he is not actually removing, which means that basically since he's not removing, that the resident is still entirely under the tenant's jurisdictions, and then it's different. Amar lein Resh Lakish niskor. Resh Lakish said, let us rent now from this Adam. Basically they can say, Rashi said in the Ritva and Yavet said that they can go lenient, but they want to go stricter, so they go and they said, let us lease from this Adam, from the owner. When we go to our sages in the south, we will ask if we did right or not. So they came and they asked Rabbi Afes, you did right by paying something to the owner, to Adam, even the lease was now by John. Okay? Another story, Rabbi Hanina Hanina bar Yosef, Rabbi Chia bar Rabba, Rabbi Yasi alkol ital pundak. So they come to those inn, to that hotel. The atan nochi mari de fundak b'shabata. that the owner of that inn come at the middle of Shabbat. So now, since he come in, what happened? They cannot carry in that courtyard that they allow originally for the Shabbat, because it's a new situation. Amru ma'u lemei garminei. So they said, what should we do now? How we handle it now? So they said, here is the problem. Socher ki me'arev damei. If you tell me that he has the status that renting from a idolater is like making an Eruv, or you said, or dilma socher ki mevatel reshut damei, or just as one who established an Eruv may do so only while it's still day. So he said, Ma mevatel reshut afilu b'Shabbat, avschor afilu b'Shabbat. So too, one who rents from a idolater property must do so while it's still day. So if you considering it like that, or you go the other way, and you said that one who rents from a idolater is like one who renounced right to his domain, just as one who renounced rights to his domain may do so even on Shabbat itself. So too, one who rents from a idolater property may do so even on Shabbat. So Rabbi Chanina bar Yosef amar niskor. Rabbi Chanina bar Yosef said, let us rent. While the others, Rabbi Yassi amar lo niskor, Rabbi Yassi said no. Amru lehu Rabbi Chaya bar Rabba nismor al divrei zaken v'niskor. We should be dependent upon the elder, which is Rabbi Chanina bar Yosef, and we should rent it. So Atu Shal Rabbi Yochanan. So they come and ask Rabbi Yochanan his opinion. So Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan said to them, Yafeh asitem shesachartem. He said, you did right by rented. So now we go to practical halacha. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 180. Ha'avara al ochlim. It is prohibited to pass bread or any other edible food and allow it to be wasted. One certainly may not actively throw away food. If the amount of food is less than an olive bark, there is no prohibition involved, but it is still not proper to do so. In the most Kabbalistic literature, they talk about God forbid, sign of poverty for someone who does that. It's like lack of appreciation. So some say that we should give it to a bird, etc. Now we talk about the responsibility of someone who's intoxicated. So this is Shulchan Aruch Ibn Ezer 444 and Choshen Mishpat 235. The legal status of an intoxicated person is that of a competent person in almost all respect. His commercial transactions are valid, as at his act of marriage and divorce. If he commits a transgression, he is punished for it, even by malkot or mitah. The only exception is that he is exempt from prayer. However, if one is as drunk as Lot in the Bible, right, he has the status of an what is called amical, some like whose actions is not of consequences, like someone fool, totally insane. We also study the importance of study at night. Limud balayla, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 238, and Yoredea 246. It is appropriate that one be more vigilant in study Torah at night than he is during the day. So that's the way to merit the crown of Torah, and we close to Shavuot. That's part of our wishes that soon Mitzvah Hashem will study all night of Shavuos. Yazef upara. If one has a fixed schedule for study each day, and one day he has not attend to some other matters, so that he is unable to complete his usual schedule, he should complete his study at night. The rationale is that the schedule is considered a kind of vow, and therefore when one accepts such a schedule upon himself, the Magen Avraham said, it is proper to say that he is not accepting as a vow, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 2:38. We also speak about hatrada batfilah. So if someone is disturbance during prayer, the early sages say that one should not pray in a place where there is something that will disturb his concentration, or when he is tired or very angry. Nowadays, people are not particular for such situations because they are not concentrate properly doing prayer in any case. We also discuss a chatzerot. If there are two courtyards, one within the other, and you have a fellow Jew and an idolater reside together in the inner one, the single Jew reside in the outer one, and the other render it prohibited for the Jews to carry from one courtyard to the other unless they rent his space from him. So that's part of what we discussed, that the important to rent it. The last halacha of today is the socher umaskir, the tenant and landlord. The GEMARA discusses a situation where a idolater, for example, rents out his house to another idolater, and if the landlord still maintains a measure of control over the tenant's quarters and their use, or if he can remove the tenant whatever he wishes, it is permitted to rent the space from him for the purpose of an Eruv. If not, one may rent only from the tenant, as Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, and that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 382.
Karetu